You're live.
Quorum. Great. So we're back on. Hello, everyone. You're still with House General and Housing, and it is still Thursday, April 17th. And our next, we're hearing Prop 3. And our next witness is Rebecca McBroom, who is General Counsel. And Rebecca, I hope, heard the committee introducing itself.
Yes.
Tell us who you are and please testify as you wish.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for having us here today. Thanks for having me here to testify. My name is Rebecca McBroom. I serve as the General Counsel for the Vermont NEA, which is the union for Vermont public school educators. We have all of the licensed teachers throughout the state, and then we also have the unlicensed support staff. We have a membership of 13,000 individuals, making us the largest union in the state. I grew up right here in Montpelier, Vermont, proud graduate of our public education system here. My mother was president of her local union, so it's sort of in the blood. And I've been a labor attorney for 14 years. And so I have some testimony that's pre-written for you, but I saw that there's a lot of questions. So please feel free to interrupt me at any time, with questions, and I'm happy to answer anything that you have.
Rebecca, you say we have testimony from Yona Rosen.
Mhm.
And we also have pre-written text. Is your testimony rewritten and that you're now going to give it, or is it something that we have? You don't have it.
You don't have it yet.
Okay.
I was in the ninth hour
Right.
drafting it.
Okay. Is it available in electronic?
I will send it to you electronically. I did hear maybe I can start with, I heard some questions about.
Sure. No, I don't want to
And
interrupt your testimony. I just wanted to figure out. So what we'll do is when you send it, we'll post it. People online can hear you. Yes.
It might be helpful, just real quick, reprieve. Half of the committee is brand new, not just to this committee, but to the body. So there are several individuals in this committee who have never even heard or voted on the original Prop 3. So I think we're working on getting individuals up to speed on collective bargaining, and we've done a few, our alleged counsel, Sophie's been great with walking us through what that looks like and what that means. So I think there are just several members who are trying to orient themselves on what Proposition 3 would do, and what we currently are looking at right now. So I don't know if that helps kind of bring clarity to some of the questions you might be.
sure. So maybe we could start with the bargaining statutes we currently have in Vermont and sort of talk about that. And then also the National Labor Relations Act. And these are the bargaining statutes that enshrine workers' rights here in Vermont. The NLRA covers private sector employees. That's where they are certified. And the NLRA was enacted in 1935. And then in Vermont, our labor statutes go back to 1969. And the
NLRA preempts. I mean, it occupies the area. It's not like we could regulate private sector employees.
That's for private sector.
Private sector,
employees, right. Currently, they bargain under that statute. Okay. And in Vermont, we have the State Employees Labor Relations Act, the Municipal Employees Relations Act, the Labor Relations for Teachers Act, the Judicial Employees Relations Act, the State Labor Relations Act, the Independent Direct Support Providers Labor Relations Act, and the Early Care and Education Providers Labor Relations Act. Those last two, I think David spoke of this, were enacted as recently as 2013 or in 2014. So as you can see, this is an ongoing practice, and as more workers in their field decide that they want to organize or have interest in organizing, that's when new statutes come about that sort of put the guardrails on what the whole process is going to look like. So just for instance, if we have a group organizing right now. What happens when groups decide they want to organize a union is they speak among their colleagues and they decide that they want to organize and they want to be unionized. They then decide who they want as a union or a bargaining agent to represent them. And they have to go through a whole process of showing of interest, right? Which is a petition that say we have a majority of us want to unionize. And then after that, if there's not the card check that was mentioned earlier, they hold an election. And those elections, I mean, it's very much a democratic process where you might have some individuals who want a union and some individuals that don't. And there's sort of a process where you're campaigning. Sometimes there's a campaign on both sides. The union might be successful in that election process and win, and then they have their bargaining representatives that they've already selected and they start collective bargaining. Sometimes they're not successful and then there's no union. If they are successful, that defines what the bargaining unit is. And everyone within the bargaining unit has the protections of the collective bargaining agreement that's bargained. They all have representation. So that's the question that was asked earlier about someone wanting to be a union member or non-union member. The bargaining unit defines who's covered by the contract. And then after that, the value of being a union member is that it's more than just having a voice. There's a whole process internally as far as running the union, what your goals and objectives are. I mean, this is truly workers that are uniting together that are making all these decisions. It's very much a democratic process. So that's sort of the backdrop. Is there questions about that?
I do have a question, actually. So the Vermont NEA is pretty big, 13,000. Very quickly, tell us a little bit about the governance. How's it run? How often does it meet? Is there some sort of executive body? Do you ever have a time where there's a general membership meeting and you find that there's no place big enough in Vermont that you can meet? I mean, how does it work?
These are all great questions. So actually, we just had our what we call our representative assembly, and that's our large annual membership meeting that we have once a year. We do sometimes have a hard time figuring out having enough space, and our members are very active right now, and so we had a very robust participation. But on top of that, Vermont NEA has local affiliates. So for instance, South Burlington has their own union. They're the South Burlington Education Association, Burlington Education Association. Some of them are merged together from a number of different schools. So those locals are affiliated with Vermont NEA, who I work for. So as a general counsel, they're my individual clients, right? Those small locals as well as Vermont NEA. And then we're affiliated also with the national NEA. So our members can also participate in the national NEA because they're members of their local, members of their state affiliate, and then members of the national association. And yes, we have a board of directors for NEA that meets on a regular basis. And then
Vermont NEA has
yes. And then all of our local associations also have their own bodies internally with executive boards and presidents, et cetera.
How big is the board?
Oh, that's a good question. I think our board is around 15. I don't know for certain, but I think that's roughly the size of our board. And those are
they effectively like a governing body in the
yes,
state? Yeah.
yes, yep. And there's regional representation there, basically. And yes,
Are non-members eligible to attend these meetings?
no. So that question earlier, if you're a non-member, you're not going to sit on governance, and you're not going to go to the representative assembly meetings. You have to be, in order to participate in the union, you have to be a union member. But that doesn't mean that's different than representation. Everyone that's in the bargaining unit has a right to the representation, but you can be in the bargaining unit and not a union member, right? Because that's decided at the beginning when you have the election and you say, this is our group and this is how it's defined. You asked questions earlier about having managers, and I mean, that's something that's all sussed out between the parties when we're getting certified. So managers do not go in the same bargaining unit as our teachers, for example. Principals don't go in our units. Confidential, there's some confidential members that can't be included in the unit. So that would all be something as part of this, getting back to Prop 3, that all of those statutes and all of those frameworks would still exist, right? It's not that every single person who wanted to come in would be in. You know, it's defined by rules, and there is determinations that go back and forth. It's another thing that the employer and the union can sort of grapple with, is why someone should be in, why it obviously doesn't make sense to have a manager in the same bargaining unit as their employees. That would be a conflict of interest, right?
So as I understand it, and tell me if I'm right, the Vermont Labor Relations Board, once you have your membership, but you're 50% plus, they are the ones that have to ask the questions. And is this logically the right group of people that ought to be together? Does it create fragmentation where you have little tiny groups that are too small, et cetera? And then are there conflicts of interest internally so that people who were deciding what a contract was would be in the union that's negotiating the contract and would be conflict of interest? They have to decide all of that, but they don't have the power, unfettered power, just to say, no, you can't organize.
No.
Yeah.
Right, correct. But the statutes that allow for the organizing are the statutes as they've been enumerated. And then as new groups are, either you can expand and more people can be organized under the current statutes, you can create new statutes for different groups to organize, but that's sort of the process. And as other employees come in and new job titles come in, then sometimes there's dispute about whether or not those should be in the unit, right? And that's where that happens over at the labor board as well.
One other question, part of my general education here. As I understand it, the National Labor Relations Act governs private employees, but it has exclusions. If it has an exclusion, does that mean that our local or our Vermont statutes can cover those individuals if they choose to organize?
I think you would need the Vermont statute to be enacted in order to enable
that, right? Yeah.
If they cannot organize under the NLRA, that's the NLRA. It doesn't mean that they're prohibited necessarily from organizing in this state if this legislature decided that they wanted to create that, right?
So the statute that we have now, for example, that says employees are not farm workers, it only has to bother to say that because farm workers are not covered by the National Labor Relations Board, right? If some group of workers is covered by the National Labor Relations Act, then we don't have to accept them from our statutes or include them. They're just not. Our statutes don't have that authority. Yeah, okay.
As they exist, right?
Yeah, right.
As they currently
exist, yeah.
Okay. So that's sort of that's an overview. I think, the fact that our statutes go back to 1969, as has been stated, our labor statute demonstrates that Vermont has a rich history of supporting the right of workers to organize and collectively bargain in our state. And as I think has been said previously, but Proposition 3 serves as a statement that Vermont continues to support workers to form unions and collectively bargain at a time when it is more important than ever. We are experiencing historic levels of income inequality in this country, and unions are considered one of the greatest tools to remedy this unsustainable economic imbalance and to improve our economy and protect the working class. The very right for workers to organize and employees to unionize is subject to significant and real threat in our current political climate. If we need to understand why this type of state constitutional amendment is so crucial in this current moment, we need not look further than Vermont's newly added constitutional amendment, Article 22, which passed in 2022 in response to the Dobbs decision, which enshrines our right to reproductive freedom in this state. This amendment, much like Article 22, reflects Vermont's intention to constitutionally enshrine the fundamental rights and protections that we hold dear in this state. This particular amendment serves to act as a barrier from two legislative lines of attack against U.S. workers' right to unionize that are very real in this country. Those include one, threats to repeal or erode public sector's workers' collective bargaining rights, and two, threats to constrain private sector workers' collective bargaining rights with right to work restrictions that prohibit unions and employers from negotiating agreements where employees must join the union or pay a percentage of union dues. This constitutional amendment could open pathways for new groups of individuals to organize, but this would be accomplished inside our pre-existing statutory framework, as I've mentioned, or new statutory frameworks to be developed by the General Assembly in the future. Again, there is nothing new, novel, or unique about what is proposed in this amendment. As I said, our first collective bargaining statutes in the state were enacted in 1969, and new statutory frameworks as recently as 2013 and 2014. This constitutional amendment protects our intentions as a state to protect what we have always held to be a fundamental right here in Vermont, and that the U.S. Constitution still holds as a fundamental right via the First Amendment protection for freedom of association. Anything else?
Any questions? Yes, go ahead.
Gail, did you have a question?
Members?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for testifying. While we have all of these people in the room, I just want to ask whether any members have further questions of any one of them, because now's your shot. Although I imagine we could arrange it again. but
And
we
we'll give
shouldn't.
another plug for our public hearing coming up.
That's, just a quick note on,
Oh,
there's currently one person signed up.
oh, wow.
So-
All right.
Anyone would like to sign up?
So if anyone
We have
wants,
3 hours.
yeah, we have allowed 3 hours hearing. We won't make it longer than it is, but in order to sign up, you have to, and I'm saying this for the audience that's online as well.
Yes.
When is it? The deadline for
by-
sign up?
It is, I believe, by Monday
Oh,
Right.
at 5 PM.
By close of business Monday, that is
Very
5
soon.
PM, it is the time to sign up. And I'm not saying that people who've testified before us here need to testify again. Did you have a question?
Just wanted to make a comment. Is that okay?
Tell us your name.
Hi, I'm Amy Bertrand. I'm the president of the Vermont State Employees Association, and I'm the executive vice president of the Vermont State Labor Council, AFL-CIO. A 25-year state employee, proud DCF Economic Services. And just in response to some of the Janice discussion. Janice,
Why don't you come sit down and tell us your full name again?
Oh, gosh, okay.
That's official.
Yeah, now it's official.
Tell us your full name again.
Good morning, Amy Bertrand, president of Vermont State Employees Association, executive vice president of the Vermont State Labor Council, AFL-CIO, 25 state year employee with DCF Economic Services Division. And then just speaking to the Janice decision, we as a union prepared for the Janice decision, expecting a drop in our membership, tried to have emergency meetings to look at our union budget and you know, are we going to have to make cuts of staff? Like, are we going to not be able to support legislative efforts? Like, what are we going to do? We scrambled. And what we saw as a result of the Janice decision was actually an uptick in our membership because there is strength in union. And while you certainly can not pay your share and benefit from all the labor discussions around collective bargaining and all the lobbying that we do here at the State House, ironically, negative energy is a rapid organizer. So the pension fight that we had a couple of years ago, we had massive signups to join the union because people wanted to be a participant in that discussion. Things that impact them, they want to be at that table. So there is strength in union, not just the benefit of that contract, but having that voice, being able to vote in the ratification of those contracts that we negotiate, being able to decide what the legislative priorities are, being able to impact body cameras at the facilities for our corrections workers, being able to discuss safety and security issues for our family services workers. So the strength in the union isn't just about the contract, it's about being a voice at the table. Also, I just wanted to add that.
How big is the VSEA here?
VSEA is about 6,100 members and climbing. I think we're at 13 units. Our newest unit is the deputy sheriff's transport deputies that just formed their union a handful of years ago. So,
It's interesting. So despite the sort of economic benefit of being a free rider, I guess I'd say what you're saying is the desire to participate in some way seems to override
it
that.
has, and we didn't necessarily forecast that to be the case, right? We were, what is it, preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, you know? So we understood that the decision was going to come down and probably have a really negative impact. And so we were preparing catastrophic kind of scenarios, and what we saw was the opposite. Happily saw the opposite.
Questions? Amy, thank you
Thank you.
for coming forward.
Thank you for speaking out.
Absolutely.
Yes.
So, Larry Moken, president of the Vermont AFL. I just want to let you know that we may not be having any signups because it's labeled as Proposition 3 instead of Proposal 3 on the website. So if anybody's looking for it as Proposal 3, it may not be coming up.
Well, that's good to
On
know.
the website.
What website?
On the, where I signed up, because I may be the only one who signed up.
Yeah. But I will,
I think the accurate,
it is,
Term is
it is a
proposition.
proposition. Yeah,
so that's why.
It is, even though it's introduced as proposal.
I believe
yeah.
so, yes.
Even though it says this proposal would amend.
Yeah. it's
Um,
considered
I'll tell you what,
proposition.
if there's a keyword, way to put a keyword of proposal in, we'll do it.
We'll get IT on.
We'll get so that people know.
Yeah, I'll get it.
Any other questions by the committee? At this point. Magali, do we have, at this point, we do not have more testimony this morning.
Cameron is coming at
11, okay, great, all right. I haven't refreshed, all right, I should do that.
You always, yeah.
It's true, I always. So what we can do, thank you, by the way, to all of you.
Yeah,
who
thanks,
came,
everyone.
Took the time from your valuable day and came. Appreciate those who testified. And we are, until 11 o'clock, we are adjourned.